This commercial is a great reminder of the influence different generations have on each other. And last week was the first week in a very short 2-week series that we're doing where we called the Learning Years, where that's coming on the end of a series we did called Faith at Home. We're taking a look at the strength of a multi-generational church. Macedonia is that type of church where we have people from birth to 90-plus years old still active in the church, and that is a blessing. And we've been talking about Faith at Home, that we want to emphasize being the type of church that encourages their families to pass on their faith to the next generation. And this continued to go on forever. Last week, we listed 4 things that the elders wanted to share with the younger generations. And those 4 things were to value people over technology. And that's so easy to get caught up in technology that we forget about the human side of things. Develop a heart of service over entitlement. We talked about that every generation thinks the next one is not as appreciative as they should be. But we do need to have our hands out in service instead of hands out looking to get something. To respect the past is another message they wanted to share. And we would be foolish not to look to the past, learn lessons, and value some of the things that have been passed to us from the past. Equally, it would be foolish to always live in the past. And finally, was become a catalyst for spiritual revival. That history has taught us that when revival comes, it involves 2 key things, and that's prayer of God's people and the young people leading it. Now, these things were said in the same spirit that Paul shared, or that Paul encouraged Titus. In Titus 2, 6, and 7, it says this: "Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled. In everything, set them example by doing what is good." Encouragement, challenging them to greater things, being an example. It's not the criticizing, it's not browbeating, it's not being judgmental. And today I want to look at 4 things that the older can learn from the younger. Last week we looked at 4 things that the older wanted to pass on to the younger, and today it's some of the things that the older can learn from the younger. And just like last week, I got this from a church who did a survey of a mega church. There's thousands of people in the church, and they interviewed or surveyed hundreds and hundreds of people to get these and put these answers together. But what you would think is that these are 4 things that the youngers want to tell the olders. But the truth is, these are taken from the surveys that the elders did and said, these are things we need to do a better job learning from the younger. So it's still coming from the older generations. First one is this: look past the exterior and see the interior. Elders were raised in a time that was much different than today. Lines were much clearer. Right and wrong was much clearer. There was that line of black and white was just clear to see. It came from a time where clothes signified certain things, whether you had money or what. Hair signified more than it does today. Appearance meant more. Therefore, we are more prone in the older generations to make judgments of a person based on their clothes or the style or just their general appearance, hair, and even skin color. But elders have recognized that this is not necessarily the best way, and have recognized that they need to work harder in not doing that. Now, that said, we are all prone to make those kind of judgments. Youngers can see an older person and make an instant judgment that they're out of touch. We can look at someone or a young person can look at somebody that's dressed very conservatively and make an instant judgment that they're out of touch. So it's something that we have to work on no matter which generation we're from. The truth is, the reason we do this, the reason we make judgments based on the exterior is because it's easier. It's easier to judge from the outside than it is to take the time to get to know the person on the inside. but that doesn't make it right. God reminded Samuel when he went to find a new king for Israel, and Samuel was looking, and he was saying, "Is this the one?" And God would say, "No." "Is this the one?" And he was saying, "What's wrong with these people?" And God told Samuel, he says, "Man judges on the outside. God judges the heart of a man." Jesus was always looking past the outside, past the differences, and finding something that he had in common with the people. He saw them as a person made in the image of God. He honored women during a time when women were not honored at all. They were considered barely above livestock. The Samaritan woman at the well, he took the time to talk to. The woman caught in adultery, he gave dignity to. He spoke to lepers, he touched them. He held children, foreigners in the land, he treated with respect. Galatians 3:26 through 28 says this, "You are all sons of God through faith in Jesus Christ. For all of you were baptized into Christ, have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Sometimes this is so hard to do. Sometimes it's so hard to look past the way we were raised or our preferences, what we like, what we think is normal and what's not normal. And some of those things can be tough to overcome. But we can never let it justify an unchristian attitude or response to people. Shelley Rawls sent me this picture this week, and I really like this. It says, as you look at some ladies in the background, an old picture, and they're wading in a stream and dancing around. It says, "We are all precious in the sight of the Lord. He may shake his head a lot, but we're still precious." And I kind of like that, and I kind of agree with it, because I do think about many times that God just looks and goes, But we're still made in the image of God. Somebody gave me a little plaque that I kept on my desk back at our house. I kept it there for a long time. It said, "Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite." And that's always brought a smile to my face, and that's fine. But we never should start believing that. We should never start believing that, yeah, Jesus loves you, but he loves people like me better. People who dress like me, people who have the background like me, who talk like me, who read this version of the Bible more than someone else, listen to this kind of music or whatever. We should never have that. One of the things that the elders said that they needed to work more on was learning to look past the exterior and see the interior. That's something that we all need to work on. Second thing is this: develop a joyful and positive spirit. Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Now, once again, this is something the elders recognized, that in that season of life, it seems to be easier to slip into a time of being more negative or more critical. I've got to tell this story. It's one of my favorite mother-in-law stories. Now, the next time she comes to church, you can't tell her this, okay? But when we go up there to visit, I always go out and check the oil in her car and check the air in the tires, drive it, see if I hear any weird noises or anything. And I came in one day and I said, "Your tires need some air in them." She goes, "Well, that's just great." I said, "Susie, it's air." I'll go to the service station, get some air in the tire. And it's so easy for us to slip into that negative, that everything's a bad thing. But the Bible is clear. We are to have a joyful, positive spirit about us at any age or in any circumstance. But it's also clear that the older generations are to have a positive influence on the younger generations. Let me say that again. We're to have a joyful spirit, but also it's clear from the Bible that the older are to have a positive influence on the younger. And if that's going to play out, it's not going to happen with a negative critical spirit, a complaining spirit. It's just not going to happen. So many people, no matter what age group it is, so many people are turned off and turned away from people and turned away from the church from a negative, joyless attitude. But are drawn to people that have a positive spirit, are joyful. And it makes no difference which age they are. A sour attitude never encourages change. It only builds walls. And let me be honest with you. There are some youngers who need to learn from the elders. And I want the elders to be that positive influence. But for them to listen to you, elders, their attitudes have to be of a type of attitude of positive and joyful, that it will send the right message. I read this week where a flower delivery, a young man was delivering flowers for the florist, and he got two of the deliveries mixed up and delivered them to the wrong place. One was to be delivered to a church that had just moved to a new location, and this was the first Sunday they were going to be in their church. And another one was going to be for a funeral. And the preacher of the church called the florist, and he was really upset. He said, this is our big day, and we've got a big flower arrangement sitting right at the front of the church that says, "Rest in peace." And the florist says, "You think you got it bad? There's a funeral somewhere in town that has "Good luck on your new location" in front of the call." Philippians 4:4 says this, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice." A joyful, positive spirit delivers the right message and accomplishes much for you and for those you want to influence. The third thing that the seniors or elders said they wanted to learn and do a better job with was learn to use technology. Now, this is the double-edged sword of technology, because one of the things we talked about last week is don't rely on technology so much. Don't value technology over people. The elders wanted to encourage the youngers, get off the cell phone, get off the computer, get off the iPad, spend time with people. And that is a much, much needed message. But on the other side of that, the older generations realize technology is not going away, and that they need to embrace it in a greater way. Now, this is hard for the youngers to understand, that elders do not grasp it right away. That we just cannot grasp it right away. I'm going to tell this on Eric. Well, I asked Eric one day about something. He goes, "You do realize this is the third time I've showed you this?" I said, "You little..." But it's hard for them to understand that elders have a harder time grasping it. When Janice and I have a problem with our cell phone, we just find a middle school student. They're amazing. They're amazing. No instruction manual, don't read anything, they just do it. Dave Stone tells a story that his mother is learning to text. His 78-year-old mother is learning to text. And she has one of the flip phones that you got to push it 3 times to get one letter. And said he and his brother are in the process of playing a dirty trick on their mother. And every time she sends a text message, and she, how long it's taken her to type out this text message. As soon as they get it, they fire back another text message. And she doesn't realize they have the voice text on their phone that you can just speak in your phone. It types out a text. And so they go, "How are you, Mom? We're doing fine. The kids are great." And she goes, "The weather here in Louisville is just doing great. I hope you're doing great. How's Dad? Everything's good. Talk to you soon. Love you. Bye." And she gets it back. She goes, "How did they do this?" But elders ask for help. Ask someone younger to help. Youngers, if they ask, then you help. And you help with some patience, generosity, a calm spirit. Do it. Take your time, and as many times as you have to do it, that you have to explain the same thing about the cell phone or the computer or the VCR or the DVR, whatever it is. Do it. And it's important for elders to ask because this builds and opens a line of communication with your grandchildren, with younger people. Mark Holman, when he was here and spoke back in October, told several stories about his mother, who is up in years, and how she is struggling to learn to use technology to communicate. But she is determined to stay involved in her children's lives and then in turn to stay involved in her grandchildren's lives. And so she learned how to email. And then when, we've moved more away from email into texting and Twitter and things like that, that she's learned to do those things. So she can remain an influence on her children and grandchildren as long as possible. And then that sends another message to our youngers. It says that I care enough about you that I'll learn something new to stay in touch with you. And let me tell you, we need our elders staying in contact with our youngers as long as possible and teaching values to them. Once again, Dave Stone, talking about technology, said this. He told, and talking about his mother, 78 years old, he said one Sunday morning he got a text from his mother, and it was sent to all the children and all the grandchildren and the nieces and nephews. And the text just simply said, I thank God that we live in a country where we can worship freely come every Sunday. And Dave said, worshiping freely is not in the forefront of a 19-year-old's mind. That's not what they get up on Sunday thinking. But because of a 78-year-old woman who takes the time to type it out, 3 pushes at a time, it brought it to the forefront of those grandchildren. I need to be thankful. I think that's a great thing. Now, this last challenge I want to share did not come from the elders. It actually came from the youngers passed on to the elders. And this 4th thing is this: don't stop running the race. Don't check out on us. Don't check out. Don't give up. Keep serving. Be a presence, an active presence in our lives. Stay present and active and visible as long as you can in the church. And then when you can no longer serve physically, that you will even reach a day that you can't be here physically. Pray and pray and pray for the youngers. Pray for their strength and endurance. Paul said it this way in Philippians 1:20 through 25. I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now as always Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to go on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Yet what shall I choose? I do not know. I am torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far. But it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain, and I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith. What Paul is saying here is for the Christian is that I win. I can't lose. If I stay, I'm a winner. If I go, I'm a winner. Either way, I win in Christ. And that's the same message for us, but for the elders. And what the youngers have asked of the elders is this: don't check out until that day comes. Stay active. Be visible. Be an active presence in the church. And I'm not being insensitive. I hope you don't think I'm being insensitive to the seniors who reach a point in their life where they can't be active. They can't be here. experienced that in my life with my mom. She was there every time the doors were open. But you reach a point where you can't. And I'm not being insensitive to that, but I'm saying just as long as you can. The youngers are asking you to be here and to be an influence for them. Stay in the fight. And if you're in one of those older generations and you feel like you're losing that zeal to be involved and to be active and that the church has left you behind, let me ask you to do this. Visit the nursery on Sunday morning or Sunday night. Go and sit in one of our elementary groups. Help out for a couple of Sundays. And see if you can't get an idea of some hope for this world. I said I wasn't going to try to identify and define what younger is and older is. I mean, that's a losing battle. But I can say from my age, for sure, we're worried. We're worried about our country. We're worried about Christianity in America. We're worried about our faith and what's tomorrow going to bring. And we're worried about those things. Our young people are not. They still are full of hope. They see great things on the horizon for the church and for serving Christ. And if we need a dose of that hope, then we need to look and go to where the young people are and see if we can get a dose of that. Look at this picture here. You can't. This is from Stop Hunger now last Saturday. And, from the picture, you really can't make out anybody's there. But just let me tell you, that's not important. But standing under this carport at 7:30 in the morning was a high school student unloading rice to be carried inside. And just had rolled out of the frame was one of the elders here at the church with one of our seniors carrying rice inside. And setting off to the side on a tractor was one of our seniors, Mr. Joe Simon Griffin, operating the tractor. And in this group was not only a high school senior, but there was a father. There was an elder here at the church. There was a young man who had just graduated from college and is now in the workforce, but he's here on that Saturday morning at 7:30 unloading the truck. And in the background is another young man who just is a high school graduate of 2014 who is already enlisted into the military and will be going away soon. But he's here on a Saturday morning at 7:30 unloading bags of rice. Casey Peden, one of our young people, while she was here in the church in high school, she went to all the mission trips that we had. It was involved in Vacation Bible School and other things. When she went off to UNC, Chapel Hill, without any credit, without any pay, she volunteered all 4 years in the Children's Hospital, a cancer ward there at UNC Hospital. She organized her own trip to Japan to go on a mission trip. There's hope. There's reason for hope. Cassidy Ward, last Saturday, was one of our teenagers, organized a fundraiser for Zoe, a young girl in the farm life community. They raised $6,000. That's one of our high school students. But this is and then just kind of go just a little bit older. There's a group of our young adult ladies who have found out and the number keeps growing every year. They're buying Christmas for 28 children in our community, in our school system, who are in the poverty line. No fanfare. These are young women who just take the challenge and they're buying those Christmas presents. But my favorite picture is here from Stop Hunger Now. Little girl there on the right is 2-year-old Avery Wilson, Jennifer and Seth Wilson's little girl. And I couldn't quit watching her. As Jennifer packaged the bags, she would hand them to her, and she would carry them to the guys in the background who packed them in boxes. 2.5 years old. There is reason for hope. There is reason for hope. Now, none of this, I know, would have happened if it hadn't have been for moms and dads or grandmas and grandpas, older generations who have no bloodline connection to these people, but because they worked, because they served, because they stayed active. And now we see a multi-generational church working and serving together. Let's keep making those kind of sacrifices so that we'll be a church like that the stories will continue to be told like this. When that box tumbled out of the back of that car, and all those numbers of little chewing gum wrapper swans fell out, it was the first time today I'd realized just what it had meant over the life of his daughter. I'm convinced that many of the things, maybe most of the things we do as Christians, will not be realized until later. But let's keep doing them. Don't get out of the game. Stay in the fight for as long as you possibly can.